How is everybody doing today? This is the Sounds Like Liberty podcast. I'm your host, Nicky P, here with my lovely wife, Lizzy.
What's up?
This is our third go-round at trying to record this intro because Liz is just apparently too tired. I should have done this at 10 a.m.
It does
no rebuttal
help.
Because we've got to get to
fine.
This is episode number 13 from the Launchpad Media. Always launching ideas in your direction.
Yeah.
Special emphasis on the always.
Nice.
But yeah, we were trying to record this, and Liz is just...
it helps that you can look at the waveform and see when it actually goes down. Like, I'm just guessing
Liz,
here.
guess what? We're paying attention to that.
Well, yeah, but you're also a sound engineer.
I listened to the volume started. She screamed into the microphone, my poor microphone.
I'm sorry, microphone.
Screamed, trying to get over the loud intro music.
Yeah, that happened. So anyways.
Yeah. She's also been super nitpicky about what song we're going to do today.
Well, see, She
thinks that race is too talked about today.
Yeah.
So we're not going to do my favorite song of all time, Sam Cooke's A Change Is Gonna Come Today.
I do want to do the song. I just want to put a little buffer zone between hey, let's talk about race, and hey, let's talk about race.
Liz, it's all anybody wants to talk about.
I don't think it's all anybody wants to talk about. It seems to be what the media likes talking about a lot, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I think people want to talk about it. I think they're weird for wanting to talk about it. I just want to, experiment with it.
Right on.
Create multiracial children of, lots of races.
Yeah.
And bang black girls.
Okay,
I want to do that.
Fair enough.
I do that. So I'm living my ultimate life here.
You're
folks.
living your best life here right now.
Yeah, I'm doing the thing that I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
Anyways, so instead of that, we're going to kind of jump around to Freewill by Rush.
Yeah.
And I hope that she is okay with getting into the density of these incredibly poignant lyrics.
I mean, we did poignant lyrics last week, so really, we're
poignant lyrics last week?
Continuing the theme. Yeah, didn't we? We did.
Yeah, but they were kind of specialized. This is a very general thing.
Fair enough, yeah.
This song is subtitled Quit Your Whining. Motherfucker.
Is it really?
Well, it is by me, if you pay attention to the actual words.
Fair enough.
Anyway, so should I probably start this one out since I am the resident Rush fan?
Please, absolutely.
All right. Well, today, let's begin. A planet of playthings. We dance on the strings of powers we cannot perceive. The stars aren't aligned, or the gods are malign. Blame is better to give than receive. What do you think, lady?
I thought there was a bit before that, but
Oh, you're right. See how I'm getting here? I don't know Rush that good.
We can start there.
Nah, we'll start from the beginning.
Okay.
And we're keeping the bullshit in here because it's funny to me.
All right, fair enough.
And I'm lazy, don't want to edit it out.
Also that.
I'm imperfect, folks. See what she has to deal with on a daily basis.
Real people. Woohoo!
There are those who think that life has nothing left to chance. A host of holy horrors to direct our aimless dance. I mean, like I said, it's dense.
Yeah.
What are you seeing in there?
Life has nothing left to chance. A host of holy horrors. So we're talking about God here? Is that what we're getting at?
Liz, it's a song about free will. What the hell do you think it's about?
Okay, fair enough. I'm just, I never really dug into the whole lyrics of the thing.
I mean, I don't even think he's obfuscating what it's about there in the least.
No, he's not.
There are those who think that life has nothing left to chance. In other words, everything is decided for you.
Right.
God knows everything.
Right.
All right? The host of holy horrors that directs our aimless dance.
Right.
God directs you with his punishment, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm with you so far.
Okay.
Yep. A planet of playthings, we dance on the strings of powers we cannot perceive. The stars aren't aligned, or the gods are maligned. Blame is better to give than receive.
What do you think?
So, yeah, kind of
This is a quiz at this point.
more
'cause,
on that point.
I mean, kind of. I mean, I think that's like taking it to the next level and getting accusatory with it.
Okay. Fair enough.
I mean, he's saying they're assholes. He called them malign.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
Like, apparently, if there are gods, they're pricks that want to watch us, flail around down here.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
All right, this is the actual chorus.
Right.
You can choose a ready guide in some celestial voice. If you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. You can choose from phantom fears and kindness that can kill. I will choose a path that's clear. I will choose free will.
Yeah. So this is like the atheist anthem right here, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Like I said, there's a lot of density, especially for us.
Yeah, sure.
Are we going to hash out our religious differences on this episode today? Is that what's going to happen?
I mean, I feel like it's been an undercurrent. People get the idea.
Okay. I mean, yeah. The big thing here is that I think he's focusing on the fact that even the act of choosing is proof. Like, the simple fact that you can choose to believe or not
Yeah.
is proof that there isn't a God.
I mean, there's arguments for that, absolutely.
Yeah, I know this song is one of them.
Yeah,
So-
I get that.
Yeah. Anyways, so you want to skip to verse 2? What do you think of that?
Let's see. There are those that think that they've been dealt a losing hand. The cards were stacked against them. They weren't born in Lotus Land. All preordained, all prisoner in chains, a victim of venomous fate, kicked in the face. You can't pray for a place in heaven's unearthly estate.
That's the sand in the face right there.
Sure.
This whole section here is quit your whining and do something with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Don't
This is
complain
very
about where you
This is once
start.
again also very Randian in its sense.
Sure.
Very atheist, objectivist.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, the whole, he's talking about the idea that, oh, woe is me, the universe is out to get me, my life is terrible, and why wasn't I born into paradise where everything is
Right,
perfect?
I got dealt a losing hand, and I can't try because
I'm just a victim of fate.
Yeah.
This was always supposed to happen. Or you made shitty decisions, and, now this is where you are.
Right. So then we go back to our refrain.
Mm-hmm. It is a good refrain, too.
Sure. Definitely singable.
Okay. This is the part where Getty's like screeching at the top of his voice.
Right on.
Just for
right
the
on.
record, we sing this in the Hot City Symphony, so it's fun.
Yeah.
Anyways, so each of us, a cell of awareness, imperfect and incomplete. Genetic blends with uncertain ends on a fortune hunt that's far too fleet. And then back to the chorus one more time.
So basically, you've got one life. It's short. You're dealt what you're dealt. Make the best of it.
Yep.
As Tim Gunn would say, make it work.
I don't know who Tim Gunn is. I'm going to assume it has something to do with fashion, since that's what she talks about that I don't know what she's talking about.
Generally, yeah. Those references go over your head.
So, God, it's such good, concise lyrics. I don't have to guess what they're about.
Yeah, absolutely. So we just
They're
have to...
artistic and yet very, there's no questioning.
Oh, yeah.
I like that.
It's a very entertaining song to listen to as well.
Yeah, it's fucking Rush.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Like, that's the point. They're good.
Right? Yeah.
So, all right. We got the microcosm down.
Yep.
What about the macro?
How are we scoring this, you mean?
No, what the hell's your thoughts on the song in general?
On the song in general, I've always liked the song in general. I mean, I don't put...
You think that it's bullshit and that God has directed every moment of our lives.
No,
it's all fated.
I never really prescribed to that version of God, I guess.
Well, I mean, that's
put it that way.
the version of God. Like, that's...
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but, you know, you have your view on it and I have my view on it.
But everybody has their own view on it.
Absolutely. Which is why I think whatever your view on it may be, I think you can get something good out of this song as far as whatever level of responsibility you feel you have for yourself. You do have some. You should be aware of that, and you should take advantage of it.
No. Listen, Liz.
What?
God knows everything. He's omnipotent. Do we agree? Is that the truth or not?
That's the premise.
Okay. So there is such a thing as fate.
Okay.
If he knows everything you're going to do because he's omnipotent, then there's only choice, I suppose, as far as you believe there is.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was the point in playing the game?
What was the point in playing the game?
Yeah. I mean, he knows at birth if you're going to heaven or hell.
Sure.
So why would he do that?
Yeah,
it's not very polite.
I get your premise. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to know. I'm not going to
Liz,
try and answer the question.
I thought you were an omnipotent being.
I'm not at all. I just know that...
you heard it there, folks. This is what this has all been leading up to.
Yep.
I just needed her to say it. Good night.
All you wanted. All right. Well...
I, on the other hand, will claim to be omnipotent, and I will own the shit out of that.
Okay, yeah, you enjoy that.
So, anyways, yeah. So you think there's anything that is a backhand to your faith in this song?
Oh, sure.
Other than like the whole song.
Yeah, clearly they're going, against specifically the whole idea of religion, and that's fine. Like, you can believe whatever you want to believe. You can have whatever feelings about it you want to have. I'm going to believe what I believe,
and this is why she's not Catholic, folks.
And that is why I'm not Catholic, because apparently to be a good Catholic, I have to be outraged about this.
It's an apostolic religion.
Yeah, I get it. Whatever.
You're supposed to go out and convert people.
Yeah, I was never really good at that, though. I think I've mentioned that on the show.
That's why it's
before.
called an apostolic religion, though.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm cool.
I was never. I find it funny most Catholics didn't actually. We just kind of said that part when we were doing our saying stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know that any of us ever really did it, though. So, all right. Where do you think we should put it on the scale?
Well, I mean, if you want to talk about individual freedom, you can't get much more at the core of that than, whether you choose to believe you have control over, like, your life choices, your fate.
So, are we saying you can't believe in God and be a libertarian?
No, I think that would be a ridiculous thing to say.
Tom Woods would never, ever talk to me. He'd say, fuck that show.
I probably already did.
He may have. I curse a lot. I promise if he ever came on the show, I would try not to curse a lot.
Wow.
I cannot guarantee I would be awesome at it.
Yeah, okay.
I would try for the sake of Tom Woods.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give it an Eric July for sure. If for no other lesson than more people accepting responsibility for their actions, whether or not they think it's a micro or macrocosmic thing, is important.
Yeah, I mean, I think I always sort of took it as if you accept the responsibility for your life on the day-to-day, then maybe eternity is something that you'll handle when you get there.
You don't know?
Nope.
You weren't there?
Nope.
Look, we got to talk to Randy.
Who's Randy?
Randy described eternity.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
All right, so we're going to move along here?
Yeah, let's move along, like you do.
Where do we move along to?
We're going to move along to, I Heard This Happen, right?
That is exactly where we're going.
Yay.
I also looked up the shortcut.
Shortcut?
Yeah, to put on, like, a little marker when I move to the next section,
Okay.
so I don't spend 10 hours editing this shit.
That's fantabulous, because this guy puts in a lot of work just getting the show.
Look, I'm poor. I can't
To be
pay
not
somebody else to
crappy.
edit this shit.
So,
So, anyways, so this week we've got some fun bands.
Yeah, we do.
We're in different places too.
Yeah, we are.
I'm over in the UK at some dank, dark dance club.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm listening to Kingdoms in Color by Maribou State.
It's pretty fun.
It was awesome. Like, there was a whole ton of new metal out, and I did almost go with Pig Destroyer for my buddy over at Liberty Weekly, Patrick McFarlane.
Nice.
But I just wasn't in the mood for Pig Destroyer today.
Gotcha.
So we chose this instead. But, yeah, it's kind of got like I think the way I described it when I was writing up the actual blog post about it was Royksop meets Caribou.
Okay.
But like a little bit more dancey than maybe either of those.
That sounds awesome. And what I heard of it was pretty fun. I do love me some Royksop.
And there's also definitely some R&B notes in there.
Nice.
Like, it definitely went more that way. But it's weird because it's like this electronic, atmospheric dance music.
Right.
Like
so, more rave than club is what you're telling
Oh,
me.
yeah, no, I'm not saying club. So I said dank. I thought that meant rave.
Yeah. Okay,
Like
fair
me and a
enough.
bunch of vampires are hanging out.
Yeah, I dig it.
Yeah.
Get the Lost Boys up in there. What?
Yeah. Their recommendation was Nervous Ticks featuring Holly Walker.
Okay.
That was the featured track on the disc, and it definitely stands out as a featured track.
Nice.
Nothing on it was bad. It was all pretty steady, which is great. The album came out September 7th, 2018.
Dig it.
So, what do you got for us this week, Liz?
I got a little something from a guy called Cory Wong. And the record's called The Optimist. And apparently, it makes sense that I would have liked this because apparently this guy is a guitar player from a little band called the Vulfpeck.
Vulfpeck, for anyone who didn't want to hear through her fucking fake-ass accent. Vulfpeck.
Okay.
As if the name wasn't hard to pronounce already. She has to
Vulfpeck.
add shit to it that makes it harder to pronounce.
I'm so sorry. I was enjoying myself. In any case, I also enjoyed myself while listening to this record because I was listening to it
I was just confused listening to the record.
in my basement doing laundry, and anything that can make that fun, I mean, has got to be a fun record.
It explains why it's so funky that it's a Vulfpeck member, though.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it was released September 8th. And the thing about this record is it's basically like riffing off of one of my favorite sort of musical things. I described it as like if John Mayer had like funk as his background instead of blues, like that would be kind of the feel that you get on it's definitely
I think you're drastically overstating that because most of the songs just remind me of Who Did You Think I Was?
Okay, fair enough.
John Mayer is plenty funky already, Liz.
Okay.
Now, you keep coming back to John Mayer, and I think it's just because you have John Mayer on the brain right now.
I like John Mayer. What am I going to say? He's got a record coming out. I'm really excited about it. Like, I just want to hear this record. And I know I said all the stuff about John Mayer, but I really do like John
Liz
Mayer,
comes
so
to me the other day, and she's like,
I felt some
she
sort of way about
talks
it.
so much shit on John Mayer because she wants to hate John Mayer, but she doesn't.
Well, I didn't talk shit on it. I said it was basic.
No, here, just
Or
say
it's basic
it with
bitch
me.
music is what
yes,
I said.
just say it with me. I'm a basic bitch.
I've already owned up to being a basic bitch when it comes to John Mayer because I like John
She's got
John
Ugg
Mayer.
boots, like that's okay.
I don't actually have Ugg boots, but whatever.
Anymore.
I never had Ugg boots. Those are ridiculous.
Whatever.
They're not actually boots.
They're not actually anything. Those things should not be worn by anyone. Like,
In any case, the track that made me think that was Light as Anything, it's got a guest vocalist, and it really does have that feel. Whatever. 91 Maxima also has some really fun, funky feel to it. That's instrumental. instrumental. And you described it as like 90s sitcom music?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like literally every song is the theme music to a 90s sitcom. And now not one that existed, but one that could have been. Like in an alternate world. In fact, even the titles of the songs.
Yeah, there is one song actually entitled sitcom, so there you go.
Well, aside from that, like Liz, you telling me 91 Maxima couldn't have been a song? Couldn't have been a show?
I don't know.
Like, this could have easily been alternate music for the Cosby Show or Wings.
Well, there you go.
But the really important thing to me, since Liz doesn't want to talk race today,
I don't,
is the fact that this dude's name is Wong. And I look at him, and he's not Asian.
He could be adopted.
You're right, he could. There's lots of Asians adopting white babies. Does that happen?
It could be a stage name.
If we have anybody who still listens, if anyone listens, who is a white person raised by Asians, like in American Dad, or apparently this case, Liz believes.
Actually, you know what? I know 2 girls who were adopted by... wait, no. Yeah, it was the other way around. Never mind.
Yeah, that's my point, Liz. There's lots of Asian babies raised by white folks. I don't know any white folks raised by Asian
I see your point.
Yeah. And I just think it's like, I love irony in music, but I don't know irony in racial makeup is the
thing. I don't think it was intentional in any case. Okay, and Juco and Jelly is my favorite track on the record, so you can check it out on Bandcamp. There we go.
Yeah.
So moving right along.
Are we moving right along?
Why not?
You just want to get away from the race discussion that I want to start so bad.
You just... It's so awkward. I don't know.
It's supposed to be awkward, Liz. That's the whole point.
Making it awkward.
The point in life is making people's skin crawl.
There you go.
At least that's why I'm here.
Fair enough.
Like, whatever gets the joke and makes people disgusted with you.
Yeah, we talked about people looking at you and just shaking their heads today.
We talked about my parents doing that.
Yeah.
That has been
and your
my life
parents
goal.
are so much more chill than my parents.
I still don't know why your mom talks to me ever. I mean, she doesn't try and come over often
me.
When I'm here. She does
wants
conveniently.
To love you. I think she does.
What's that?
She just doesn't understand you.
No one understands me. That's the point. I'm an enigma. I'm a riddle. You don't get it.
An enigma, wrapped in a mystery, covered in secret sauce.
That's stealing other people. It's plagiarism, Liz. Come up with a better joke. Come up with your own joke. All right. So we have a special treat today. I'm very excited about this.
Yes.
Our interview, we have the illustrious Mance Rayder.
Yeah.
Which was fun. I don't know if you did he feel a little standoffish to you in the beginning?
I mean, he's Mance Melon Farm Raider. Like, what do you want from him?
No, I'm just saying.
He's a professional podcaster. He's just here doing his job.
And you know what? Not to point any fingers, but did he maybe point out in there once or twice? I'm friends with Tom Woods and Scott Horton. It's okay.
Well, yeah, like,
I would tell literally everybody if I was friends with
You
Tom
just walk
Woods
into a room and be like, bam, Mance Melon Farm Raider.
Oh, no, I tell everyone, yeah, to totally interviewed Mance Rayder. Yeah, totally
ridiculous.
Did that. I'm awesome.
Because you are ridiculous. That's why. He's a professional, so he doesn't
is
do
a
that
pro.
shit.
He does this.
Anyways.
He's also a meme author and a regular author.
Yes, he is. And actually really fun to
he was
talk
fun.
to.
It was a blast to talk to Mance. Some of this will be behind a paywall because I got to keep the episodes short, and we did actually talk to him for a fairly long amount of time.
Yeah, we really appreciated the amount of time.
We really did try to keep the foreign policy to a minimum, but it's difficult, when you got somebody like that on who knows a lot about the stuff.
It's going to come up. Come on.
And it did.
Because we care about that. It's important.
It is. So, a couple things. I think we might be introducing a new segment coming up here. It's a couple minutes in the middle of the show that I'm going to be taking to feature people running for office in Ohio, which is where we're at.
Yeah.
Because I'm out there doing that taking human action thing and getting involved in the things that I'm involved in. I know, I'm sure we've got voluntarist people out there. And I'm sure we've got political libertarians out there. I'm kind of like halfway between each. Like, I feel like voluntarism is like the appropriate thing, but I don't know that the world is capable of it yet.
Yeah.
That's why I call myself an evolutionary ANCAP.
Yeah, I mean, I like literally, I might be crossing that line from like whatever I was before, undecided, to actually some sort of anarchist, because I read a book, a voluntarist book, and I was swayed. I'm going to be honest.
Who narrated that fantastic book?
That was Mr. Roger Paxton.
Give a big shout out to Roger because he got it to us for free.
Yes, he did.
And as homeschooling parents, it was a sweet book.
It was very sweet. It's about homeschooling specifically and volunteerism, and yeah, it is
voluntarism.
A voluntarism.
I don't know what
volunteerism
volunteerism is. Is that where you sign up to do things?
People, I apologize. Yeah. Yeah, but no, it was a great book, and yeah, you can go dig it up on Amazon, right?
I mean, that's where we read it on Audible.
Okay, yeah.
Because it was Roger Paxton reading the book.
Right.
I'm going to be honest, I don't even remember who wrote the book. You might know more than I do, but don't look it up. We'll find.
It'll be.
Maybe I'll put it in the show notes.
There you
go.
Anyway, great book.
It was a great book, but as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, so I might be adding like a 10-minute segment.
Yeah.
Talking to Ohio politicians about running in Ohio.
So if you're from Ohio, you can get up on what's going down.
Yeah.
In Ohio.
We said, go take that human action. In a separate vein, I finally did it, Liz. I broke the code.
What'd you do?
I decided on the name.
Oh, yes. This is super exciting, y'all.
I have hated the name that I chose because I don't think there was a name. And it was very difficult to find a name for the Patreon group. Okay?
Yes.
But I did it.
He picked a name that makes me want to be in the Patreon group.
Yeah.
And I don't even think I'm eligible for that.
I mean, you could start your own Patreon account. The Freedom Choir.
Yes. Join the Freedom Choir, folks.
Yeah. I want to be in the Freedom Choir.
Yeah, right?
I mean, there's a bunch of great stuff that we give out. At least it's great in my end because I created most of it. I've been told by my other podcasters that I'm friends with that it looks like an inordinate amount of work, but I'm willing to do that for the people that support us.
Well, there you go. But yeah, you can join the Freedom Choir. You can be an alto or a soprano.
I think the Songbirds are a good place to start if you just want to get involved for a
bass or tenor.
And I chose.
I'm just
weird,
throwing out choir-y things.
Yeah, I chose weird dollar amounts too because it was fun for me.
Fair enough.
Like $1, $3, $6. Who knows?
$1.
Although they only go up to I think $18 currently. So that's and that's per month. That's not per episode. So
that's a reasonable amount.
I think that's very reasonable. Sure. I spend more than that on some of the podcasts I follow.
Well, there you go.
So, but anyways, just throwing that out there, folks.
Yeah. So check it out.
You can
check it out on our webpage.
This is a lot of work. Also, visit the soundslike.libertypodcast.com because I just spent a ton of time working on that this weekend. It looks so much like, dude, it looks like so much fun. Like it looks good on the phone and everything.
Yeah, it's sexy. I like it.
I think it's sexy too. But I think I'll stop belaboring it and let's get to our interview with Mance. So, here we go.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going.
It is going. You're the most punctual man I've ever had to do a podcast with.
Well, I do interviews all the time.
Yeah.
And I interview people all the time, and it's very rare that somebody's late. So I just make it a point if people are, being punctual with me, I'm going to be punctual with everyone.
Maybe that's like the level of professionalism that you're at, because half the time I can't even get people to show up. You schedule it, and then I'm like, and earlier that day, hey, we good, and they're like, what are you talking about, bro? I'm like,
maybe it's a musician thing.
Maybe it's a musician thing. There is that angle.
That is definitely a musician thing, believe
me. Do you spend time around musicians?
I worked in the music industry for 15 years.
Oh, really? See, and that's the things you find out about people that I had no idea. I would have never guessed. I just assumed you were like a fire and brimstone conservative turned libertarian and just kept all the fire and brimstone.
No, I don't am I still fire and brimstone, or am I just, I don't know.
I feel like the vibe you're throwing out is a little intense. I don't know if you're aware, but.
Oh yeah. Oh well, definitely. I mean, that's just my personality. So.
And it's appreciated.
Oh yeah.
I've never heard anyone say anything derogatory about Mance's persona. That's for damn sure. Anyways, welcome to Sounds Like Liberty.
Yes.
Where we like to talk to you libertarians and voluntarists and all that stuff about music. Because I don't know about you, my heart can only take talking about foreign policy so much before it wants to explode all over people.
Well, I mean, I've sort of, I have this podcast and the social media presence where I have to be on top of things. So I would say in the last 2 years, considering that I decided to devote, my life to doing this, the amount of music I listen to has probably gone down by 80% or 90%. Normally, I listen to a lot of podcasts and I do a lot of reading now, and I'm constantly doing a study for my podcast. God, I would say that before I started doing this, it would be like 80% of the time I'd be listening to music, 20% of the time I'd listen to podcasts or the news or something like that.
Yeah.
And in the last 2 years, that's flipped.
Wow.
Yeah, I know what that's like. The minute I discovered podcast, I was disappointed in how much new music I didn't listen to. That's why let's see here. Let's start with the obligatory questions. I'm sure there's not anyone who would listen to this who at least has not ever heard of Mance Rayder. But tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into Liberty in the first place.
Oh, it's the story that's been told 1,000 times. I was really confused about politics after 9/11, and I couldn't figure anything out. And then it took 6 years hearing Ron Paul debate Rudy Giuliani, and basically everybody else on that stage wanted a piece of him. The Rudy Giuliani, what they call the Ron Paul moment, where he just basically said in one sentence what took me I couldn't figure out in 6 years was that they hate us because we're over there. And that sentence, I immediately, he had one book at the time. It was basically a collection of the House floor speeches he had forever, called The Foreign Policy of Freedom. I ordered that book. I read it. And then something I read on the internet said that he was a fan of the Mises Institute. So I got, I researched the Mises Institute, started reading Rothbard, and, like 6 months to a year later, I was basically a narco-capitalist. And, since then, I've done a lot of studying and a lot of bouncing around, but I kept to myself and didn't really say anything publicly until a couple of years ago when I decided to take to social media and really just started making memes and sharing memes. And then about a little over a year ago, I started a podcast of my own, and it's really started to take off. So
everybody, all the talk in town is about, man, whatever Mance is doing, like that's what everybody needs to be doing, because dude's just he's a giant, he's a monolith overnight. How'd that happen?
Well, I mean,
I keep telling him, write
funny.
A book.
It's funny how I would say the first I released episode 149 on Friday, and I remember the first 20 episodes, watching it and looking at the download count and getting excited if it got to 30.
No.
And being really excited. And then I think my first interview was Adam Kokesh, and that got 200. And I thought, man, I've made it and everything. And then I think the next one I did a solo episode and it went back down to 30. And I'm like, well, I like the interview process. So I had Rayford Davis, former police officer turned anarchist voluntarist.
I love Rayford. He's a good man.
Yeah. and then I asked Scott Horton to come on, and Scott, it just happened to be the day that Fool's Errand released.
Oh, wow.
And so, like, I got, like, the first interview, and he posted it up on his website, Libertarian Institute. And, people started, gradually people started listening and everything. But it really wasn't until I was invited on to Dave Smith's Part of the Problem and onto the Tom Woods show to talk about the first book that I wrote, Freedom Through Memedom.
I remember those episodes.
Yeah, that's when everything started to take off, because most of the people that have contacted me since then say, I heard you on Tom Woods, or I heard you on Dave Smith. And, that's the one thing I would tell people who are doing podcasts and want their podcast to be heard by more people and get more downloads is you have to do something to get on the bigger shows. Mm-hmm. The people who have tens of thousands of listeners, like Dave and Tom have. And that if what you're doing is something that people want to hear and are interested in, then they will, then people will start listening. And I think the only other thing that I have going for me, compared to a lot of people, is I just don't really give a shit what people think, and I'm going to say what I want to say. And I don't think there's much of that out there. I think that people try to, I get attacked all the time for, liking Tom Woods or Lou Rockwell or people like that. And I'm like, fuck you. I don't, screw it. Fuck you.
Well, for me, my big thing is I'll concede. So what if they're racist? I could even give a shit if they're racist. If the ideas are good, the ideas are fucking good. If you want to give me bullshit about the ideas only. I get called a racist every day, and I'm married to a black woman and have a mixed daughter. So we're not carrying any weight, folks. My dad was Puerto Rican, and I get called a racist all the time. I grew up in the South Bronx, New York, and like my first 3-4 girlfriends were black and everything. It's like, I just don't care about color. I care about how you treat people. No, absolutely.
And I care about what your ideology is.
I care about color because black women typically have better asses than white women, but that's a different matter entirely. We're just getting into physical attributes at that point, and it's a law of averages.
Typically,
there's always an outlier or two.
There's nothing sadder in this world than a black woman with no ass. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
So, moving along. I don't like to spend too much time talking politics, honestly. It'll seep in anyways. But so if you could characterize your personal music taste, what would you say it is? What kind of music do you listen to?
Oh, I would think that most people who've known me for most of my life would know they would consider me to be a metalhead.
Okay.
Well, what's metal? I'm judging. I've seen you got some gray in the beard, so unless it's fake, you're probably a little bit older than me. Are we going 70s metal, 80s metal?
No, it's not fake.
He's earned it.
I've had gray coming in since I was 23.
Oh wow.
But what would I consider? Well, let's see. The second album I ever bought was, and this is well after the original release, mind you. I'm not as old as most people think. The second album I ever bought was the first Black Sabbath album.
That's a good album.
That led to, that's an insanely good album.
Some good dad rock.
So bluesy. So much blues on that album.
So kids, go out and chop off parts of your hands. That's the lesson there.
Is that how that works?
Yeah. And then because of that, I bought the first 2 Ozzy albums, the solo albums, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. And basically my dad had Cream albums, Cream 8 tracks laying around.
Nice.
We had an 8-track player in my old camper when I was a kid.
He had some George Harrison solo stuff, early 70s stuff.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Santana, like the Abraxas album. So I mean
you came up on a steady classic rock kind of diet then.
Yeah, but I mean, I immediately got into metal. I immediately got into metal. I was into Metallica way before most people were. I was into Megadeth way before most people were.
I've been getting into Megadeth more now because as I look at his lyrics, I tend to like them more and more as the days go by.
Yeah, his lyrics, his songwriting, his arrangements, time changes in general appeal to me. Well, and a lot of that metal got me into listening to punk too. So, and a lot of the punk that I listened to tended to be very anti-establishment, but way more left-leaning, way more ANCOM, like the Exploited.
Yeah, we have that conversation once an episode.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, and I still listen to the Exploited all the time. I still listen to. I mean, Anti-Flag is a band I listen to all the time. Obviously,
I've got a strung out tattoo on my arm. So.
So it's like, I mean, I can get past it because most of these bands are anti-war when there's a Republican president.
I just sum it up by, if only they understood economics, we'd be in the same place. So we've already kind of addressed, like the fact that podcasts have kind of taken over the majority of space you have for music in your life. And believe me, I get that as a guy. Like most of the time I even listen to music, I'm learning new songs for cover shows to go out and make money on the weekends. How does music fit into your life? Is it just kind of like the casual listening every now and again, or when the wife wants you to listen to something, you want to hang out or whatever?
Yeah, when the wife and I are driving around, like on Sunday and everything, we'll have we'll bounce back and forth between a couple stations on Sirius. You mean
you don't force her to just listen to Scott Horton?
Well, I mean, my wife has her own podcast.
Oh, really? Speaking of which, we haven't mentioned specifically what your podcast is yet, have we?
Yeah, it's the Free Man Beyond the Wall podcast. And basically what I do is the majority interviews. I like to talk to people I like to talk to people who are different on opposite end of the spectrum. I like to talk to people who agree with me, who are anarcho-capitalists, libertarians, voluntarists. But I mean, I will have anybody on there who has an interesting story to tell, or who comes from a, I just had attorney John Whitehead, who's the founder of the Rutherford Institute, and he spoke recently at the Ron Paul conference. I believe it's called War and Media Conference in Washington, D.C. And he's an attorney, and he says the police are the standing army that the founders warned us about. And when I heard him say that, I was like, I need to get an interview with this guy, because I've been saying this for years. And I had him on for my last episode. The episode I released on Friday is with him. And basically what everyone has told me about that episode was they did not want it to end. They just wish it was longer. Because, I mean, this is a guy he's an attorney. He has all these stories about police overreach and police just torturing people and all this. And that's what his institute does, is it goes out and it gets these people out of jail, gets them out of county jail, gets them, does everything that they can to help these people who are being abused by the system. And I don't know that he's a libertarian. We didn't even discuss it. All we needed to know that it is he was in it. All I needed to know is that he's anti-authoritarian.
Yeah.
And if you're an anti-authoritarian, I'll talk to you. I don't care if you're, I don't care what your, the rest of your politics are.
Yeah.
It's like having, I've contacted Glenn Greenwald. It was one of my dream interviews. And I told him, I said, I don't give a, I don't give a fuck what your politics is besides anti-war. I just want to talk about, I want to talk about being anti-war, and I want to talk about all this Russia bullshit. Yeah, because he thinks it's all, he knows it's all a scam. He knows it's all.
See, we all have our white whales. Yeah. So, do you have any really powerful moments that you kind of, the way I think of them as the soundtrack moments, like where you'll hear a song and immediately you're transported back to this moment in time, or every time you think about that this particular time, you hear a song in your head, kind of thing.
I mean, yeah. I mean, there's a ton of songs, because music's always been such a huge part of my life. I mean, there's a ton of songs, like anything off of the Ozzy Osbourne album, Blizzard of Oz. Just takes me back to the apartment I grew up in New York, because I mean that's where I listened to it. That's where I bought the vinyl and I put the vinyl on the friggin' turntable and put it on and would just listen and put the headphones on in the living room, in that little apartment, and I would just listen to it for hours. I'd listen to it over and over again. So anytime I hear a song,
go on, you're good.
Anytime I hear a song off of that album, I basically think about that time in my life growing up.
So where does Goodbye Romance specifically take you to?
Oh, like the first time a girl ever broke my heart and everything, that song, that song, that's like one of those songs,
Oh, yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
I remember, well, what's hilarious? What's hilarious about that song? I would like listen to that album every once in a while without the headphones on, and my dad would be home, and it would always get to that song, and my dad would just be like, "This is the gayest fucking song."
I was gonna say your dad walks and goes,
awesome.
"Stop being a queer, son."
Yeah, it's like, this is the gayest song in this album.
That's hilarious.
I'm like, leave me alone.
Oh, good Lord. So we'll expand this question bigger than I normally would. And feel free to, for anonymity's sake, not get too into this. But so you said you were involved in the music industry for 15 years. In what capacity were you involved in the music industry?
Publishing.
Ooh. So you write music, or you help other people publish? I
worked for a publisher.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's not an industry anymore, is it? Don't we all do that on our own?
No. I mean that was back in the days of ASCAP BMI, and their main job was basically tracking down anywhere a song was being played, and pretty much. I mean, I was out of the industry by the time iTunes really took off. But I assume once iTunes took off, and it just basically it became where you could just get one song, download one song, buy one song here, one song there, things like that. And especially with downloading, that I assume that ASCAP BMI is just basically scouring the airwaves now for things being played. I don't even know how.
I think what they actually do is just go to venues and harass them to pay more money than they're supposed to get their licensing.
Oh.
So, what's the best show or performance you ever seen?
Well, this'll definitely date me. It was the Cameo Theater in. Well, I don't know. There's so many.
For a minute there, I thought you were about to say Cameo was the best performance you've ever seen, and I was gonna be like, that does date you, my friend.
Oh, I wish I could have seen Cameo because they were actually really good. But I love so many of those 70s bands. They're just, the instrumentation and the bass playing on them is so amazing. But I saw the main event was Slayer. Before Slayer was Motorhead, and before Motorhead was Overkill. And that was nice. That was an amazing show. I mean, there was so much adrenaline in that show that it was like after every 3 or 4 songs we had to smoke more because it was like just we were sobering up.
I was going to say he says adrenaline, but what he means is testosterone.
Either one
There's
works.
Like not a titty in that room.
You'd be surprised in Miami. You would
wow.
really be
Oh,
surprised.
God, Miami?
Miami.
Oof.
Yeah.
That's
You
too
would
hot.
really be surprised in Miami how many girls would actually show up to those metal shows. I mean, the Cameo was so famous for their metal shows that they actually we called them the Slameo. Because it got to the point where it was a theater and they were having so many metal shows that they tore out the first 10 rows so that they could have a pit.
Oh, wow.
That's crazy.
And yeah, and I mean, I saw weird shows there. I mean, I saw Nights Are Ebb there. I saw Peter Murphy, and Jewel opened for Peter Murphy.
What?
Wow.
That's interesting. Did Jewel sound like Jewel?
Yeah, it was her first. It was on her first album. It was like the very earliest. Earliest parts of her first album, when her first album dropped, and before things started taking off and everything. And I mean, and she did not get a good reception from the Peter Murphy crowd, as you would expect.
I mean, I can't imagine.
Singer. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a goth crowd.
Yeah.
And she starts fucking yodeling on stage.
Oh,
and it's
God.
like, please stop.
This is a world I'd never dreamed possible to exist.
That's awesome.
Oh, that may have been.
But I would say a very close second show was. I mean, I saw the Tune In Burnout tour with Sisters of Mercy, Public Enemy, Warrior Soul, X.
That's a really interesting cross section of bands too.
It was really cool. I mean, I'm a huge Sisters of Mercy fan, and I mean, I basically know every one of their songs, every lyric of every one of their songs, and
they're not a metal band, Liz. Just so you know.
I was also a huge Public Enemy fan, so it was actually a really good night. The only problem was where I saw them in Tampa, and Tampa had this thing where the show had to end by a certain time, and Public Enemy went on last, and they only got to do like 35 minutes. But I also did see, I saw, and this will really tell how old I am, I saw Metallica open up for Ozzy.
Oh, wow.
Well, you say that, but Metallica's been playing for 4 or 5 decades now.
Yeah.
At which point in that time did Lars need a cane?
When was the last time they opened for Ozzy?
That's a good question.
Yeah. Last time Ozzy
I'll just leave it. I'll let everybody Google.
There you go.
I guarantee I've got a guy I can call right now and tell me when that was.
I can still tell you the date.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I still remember the date.
Well, that's a pretty impressive show then.
Yeah, it was. It was it was insane. And the crazy thing about that was at the Brendan Byrne Arena in New Jersey, and half the crowd left after Metallica.
Oh, wow.
Weird. See, like, there's so many of those, like, iconic bands that I will never get a chance to see because I'm not going to bite the bullet and watch, like, half the band perform.
You mean like the Ramones?
Right.
Well, like the Ramones. In my head, I was thinking of, like, if Zeppelin ever got back together. But terrible.
I've seen Robert Plant solo, and he was actually pretty good.
I mean, he's good. Honestly, my favorite thing that he was ever on was him and Page when they did the Honey Drippers back in the day. I'd rather listen to that than Zeppelin. And the best part of Zeppelin is John Paul Jones, and they don't tour with him anymore, so... Yeah, not worth my time. I'd rather go see him play with them Crooked Vultures. So that's what needs to happen. If Dave Grohl scrolls random podcasts, get them Crooked Vultures back together. All right, well, we'll get to the big question, not take up too much of your time today. So if you could recommend people go out and listen to 5 records today, what would they be and why?
The first Black Sabbath album, because I mean they did that in 1969.
Wow.
And if you listen to it, so much music today is still influenced by that. And it's technically a blues album, especially if you get to like the last song, Warning, which is a cover song of, God, I can't remember the guy's name, Ainsley something. It has one of the greatest guitar solos you ever hear in your life. It just because it's so iconic. second one, Megadeth, Rust in Peace, has one of the greatest anti-war songs on it of all time, Holy Wars.
Yep.
I mean, that's one of the most brutal. I mean, the changes on it. It's a really just basically a piece of classical music that sounds like metal. That's how many changes it has on it. The first Ramones album, because I'm from New York.
Here's a question: did they actually put out albums? Like I always just got the impression that they just released singles. Like
the first album, the Ramones, was a full album. I mean, I think they recorded it in like 3 days too. And
if they're punk, hopefully.
And at that time, like, I mean, even I think Seymour Stein was still the head of the label, and he was like, God, if every band could do this, you have any idea how much money we'd save? that album probably influenced most of the thrash bands that came through the 80s, your Metallica, your Megadeths, and all those bands. And it has, being from New York, it's a very New York. A lot of the lyrics are talking about specific places that I grew up around, and it has a specific attitude that really is just, New York. Especially the first 4 albums are just.
I get the same thing from Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Really?
Yeah, you can tell they're from Cleveland. Like, you watch their videos and you can, like, oh my God, I work in that neighborhood occasionally. It's weird.
So that's 3. I always have to go with Iron Maiden, Killers. That's their second full album, and Bruce Dickinson isn't even singing on it. It's still Paul Di'Anno, and it's still has, for as much at that time, if you would have interviewed them, they would have said that we hate punk and fuck all the punks and everything like that. There's so much punk influence on that album, and it's still just a lot of the attitude of that album, and the imagery on that album of like murders in the Rue Morgue, things like the song Killers. They were still sort of stuck in this horror punk, almost like a horror punk, like what the Misfits would become most famous for. A lot of that imagery is on that album, but I mean that album's just personally to me is one of the great metal albums. And what's funny is if you metalheads from back in that time, even like famous guys who were in bands like Metallica, Slayer, all those bands, everything, they will tell you that's their favorite Iron Maiden album, even though Bruce Dickinson's not on it, and it didn't sell nearly as much as Number of the Beast or something like that. And then I guess my 5th album, God, I really need a 6th album here, guys.
That's fine. There's always the honorable mention category.
Okay, my 5th album would be Sisters of Mercy, Floodland.
It's a good album too.
I've never heard an album like that before in my life. That album is, I mean, I've like told people have been like, so what album, would you say is maybe your favorite album of all time? And I'll mention that album, depending on what the day and the mood and how much vodka I've had.
And if they're under 40, they've never heard of Sisters of Mercy.
Yeah, and if they're under 40, most of the time they've never heard of Sisters of Mercy, unless their parents were in the Sisters of Mercy. And I mean, that album is just so fucking amazing. There's so much on it, and and Andrew Eldritch's voice is something that should never have been allowed to be on a label. And that guy's voice, no one should ever hear him sing. And somehow his voice and the message, and here's another guy who's a fucking, will tell you, admittedly, he's a socialist, communist, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care. The album is just, the way it changes the whole way through is some of the most magnificent shit I've ever heard in my life. And then I would say honorable mention, The Exploited, Let's Start a War.
Nice.
I mean, I have a Belgian pressing of that. Sometimes, every once in a while, if I really like, if I'm really enamored by something, I'll try and go find like obscure copies of it and everything, and I have a Belgian pressing of that, and it has a couple extra songs on it. But Let's Start a War by The Exploited, I mean, just for the lyrics of the song Let's Start a War, for the title track, I mean, it's just, he's basically telling the story of how these fucking wars get started.
Mm-hmm.
And just how bullshit it is, and he calls out Thatcher. He calls out Thatcher right in the beginning. I mean, let's start a war, Maggie said one day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just fucking wake up and it's like, let's start a war.
Yeah.
What is it?
Bullshit.
It's there's that, is it the dead Kennedys that have Nixon calling up, is it Khrushchev? Saying, hey, we got all these kids over here. They're not doing a whole hell of a lot. What do you say we come up with a thing?
God.
We got a bunch of teenagers over here not doing that. Let's get them fighting.
These people are fucking psychotics. And what's funny is, bringing it all back to music.
You mean you didn't mourn the death of John McCain this week? How dare you?
I celebrated
what kind of
that.
Human being are you?
But the great thing about these musicians is that they would call attention to this stuff. I mean, not so much anymore, because you just don't really hear a lot of it. But like, if you look at a song like God, I can't remember the name of the song right now. It's a Sabbath song off of Paranoid, where he's talking about the friggin' heroin epidemic the soldiers are facing in Vietnam. I mean, these guys were way ahead of their time talking about war and talking about what hell it was and how it was, how it's all that someone else would get rich. And, that was, that's something that more, the stuff that I couldn't put together when I was younger. But when I got older and I started listening to people like Ron Paul, I'm like, boom, that's what these guys were talking about. That's what these guys have been. I mean, and even though they're leftists and everything, at least they understood that.
Well,
I have no problem being, talking to, being allies with leftists who are anti-war, because I mean, if you're not anti-war, you're just waiting for a bomb to drop. I mean, these people have no idea what being pro-war and being, we have to support the troops when they're doing this and doing that is. They have no idea what they're saying by doing that. And they're just basically telling these guys, yeah, go ahead, do whatever you want.
Is there anything else you wanna plug while we?
You got to plug it in. It's the third time that really sells it and keeps it in the brain pan. The Free Man Beyond the Wall podcast.
It started out as, hey, let me see if I can do this, and it's really turned into something that's very important to me, and it's something that's important to a lot of people. When you start doing something where you're sharing your opinion and you're bringing people on to talk about their opinions and you're breaking facts and important things down with them, for other people who are on the outside of that conversation, or if it's just me and I'm talking to myself, for other people to say that they appreciate what I'm doing and that they actually look forward to, when I see like 2 hours after I release a podcast episode that 10 times as many people who were listening to my first podcast and 20 times as many people who were listening to my first podcast total have already downloaded, it's amazing to me. It's amazing to me. So, I just, thank you. I want to thank everybody, but it's
and all this for memes, bro.
I think, and what I think it also is, it's from just not holding back and saying what's on your mind. I mean, people in history who've spoken their minds, like one of my heroes, and I own 4 first editions of his books, was H.L. Mencken. And this is a guy who he was not out there to make friends. He was
I feel like he did, though.
Well, he did because he spoke to a lot of people.
Yeah.
But the ruling class did not like this guy. And
What's one of the books of his that you'd recommend? Because I've done surprisingly little reading on like a lot of the philosophies. For me, it was one of those things where literally the first time I heard this, I'm like, oh shit, that's the way I feel. There's a name for it. Okay, I get it. So I've spent. I mean, I've spent a little time on it, but far less than I think most other people have getting into the philosophy of the ideas. Just because to me it was just always common sense. Like, and I've never heard anything that goes, that doesn't really make sense with, other than unless you're trying to tell me communists or libertarian. But that's another thing.
I think Mencken he spoke to a lot of people because most people are disgusted by what they see. What they see people in power doing, what they see, the people that they elected are doing.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, a good way to start with Mencken it's a book called The Chrestomathy. It's Chrestomathy. And it's basically just a collection of, like, his best writings. And,
I was going to say, it sounds like a C.S. Lewis book or a fucking Tolkien thing. Like, is this what happens before Gandalf?
Yeah. It's the first thing that I found. And it's basically, he chose what he thought were his most important writings and put them into one book.
Oh.
And and that's where I started, and then eventually I started looking at other books that he did, and I mean he did books where he talked about the English, talked specifically about the English language and how people would use it, and there's a lot out there.
As an amateur linguist, I'm very interested in that.
Yeah, he was amazing, and I asked Daniel McAdams from the Ron Paul Institute for Peace and Prosperity, the president there, what it would be like if Mencken would have had Twitter. He said it'd be poetry.
I've got a meme for you, by the way, that you'll appreciate when I send it. Specifically in relationship to Daniel McAdams.
Okay.
He didn't comment on it when I tagged him in it, but maybe you can do it.
Send it through, and I'll tag.
I mean, you're the meme police, right?
No, I'm not the police at all. I try not to. I try not to comment anymore on people shitty. If someone's meme is shitty or not, I just won't say anything. People send me memes all the time, and they're like.
And here, I thought he was going to make a joke about, no, dude, don't ever put me in the word police together. Come on.
No, people send me it all the time and everything, and I think people have figured out that if I share it on Twitter, that means I like it. I'm not going to tell you if I don't like it or not.
We didn't really mention too much about it. So you have books of your own. Is your second one out yet? I remember you talking about working on it. I wasn't sure if it came out yet.
Yeah, my the first one was Freedom Through Memedom, and that's basically becoming like my
claim to fame.
Yeah, it continues to sell. And it's very shocking to me that I knew that it was good when I came out with it because it's very simple, and it's something that any age. I wrote it for any age. I've had people say that they've gone through it with their 10-year-old kid, and people said they've given it to their 65-year-old dad.
It's terrible. It doesn't lend itself to audiobook though.
Yeah, I know.
That would be difficult.
People have told me that. But,
it'd be really funny is if you read the book and then gave a verbal description of what they'd see in the pictures.
I've actually thought about that. But the second book, which I released not long after, I mean, I think I released it like 4 months after. I just wrote two on top of each other.
Okay.
It's called The Kids Are Not All Right. And it's basically taking a look at the culture of how, and I use the word Marxism and socialism, of how basically the government, how the government's teaching people to, by how the government operates, it teach people to rely on the government, which a lot of different terms can be used. But, when I break it down, I talk about how the government and the press uses it. And then I talk about how college professors are infesting students' minds and how that's causing the students to act, and how that's spilling out. How at one point you only had to worry about that on college campuses, and then it spilled out of college campuses, and you could see it in like human resources departments now of major corporations, including the company I work for. And then I talk about how this is basically affecting culture, and then I finish it off by talking about how I think the best way to deal with this is, and it always comes back to the state, that these people would have no power to inflict their attacks on free speech, or trying to make misgendering people illegal, if there was no state there to enforce these laws.
All right, boss, I'm gonna go say hey to my kid. It has been a fantastic time talking to you, though.
Well, I mean, I had a great time, and thanks a lot. I mean,
hopefully it was a little nice. Different than the usual interview.
Well, and I could talk about music for hours. So.
Well, anytime you want to come back on and talk about music, man, we can do that for sure.
But it's going to break off into politics every single time.
Oh no! Well, look, there's a reason I talk to libertarians on the show, because it's going to go that way anyways. But we can at least deal with the guise of trying to talk about music. I didn't say that we're not libertarians. Also, we're just music people.
There you go.
All right, it was great talking to y'all. All right.
It's 80s, man.
Just watch the flames go out. Feel the heat.